And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo! Welcome back to another episode of Tickety Boo. Today we're talking about if it's meant for you, it will never have to be forced. We don't talk enough about how exhausting it can be to keep fighting for things that weren't really meant for us in the first place. Relationships we've had to chase, the job that drains you but looks good on paper, the identity that you wear to make other people comfortable around you. If it needs constant pushing, fixing, or bleeding to just keep going, it's not aligned, it's fear. Because what's truly meant for you, it doesn't demand you to shrink yourself down. It doesn't ask you to abandon all of your needs. If something only survives because you keep sacrificing parts of yourself for it, it was never really yours to keep, was it?
No.
So let's start here. What's something in your life that you've tried to force, even though deep down you knew it wasn't right for you? Iona.
Gosh, there's so many, and there was more the younger I've been, I have to say. It's whether it's been a project, like even when I was working for somebody else or when I've been with my own business, it's trying to go after that thing that you think you should. You get caught in the shoulds, or it can be ego driven. It's like, oh, if I do this, it'll be great. It'll look great for my career, but it's actually not something that brings you joy and feels easy. And I kind of find it easier to talk about it in the other way, whereas I now recognize if it feels hard. Now, not to mistake this with hard work. Yes, if we have something we need to do, relationships, work, yes, we have to work at it. I'm not saying that, but it shouldn't be hard. We shouldn't energetically just be drained. It should fill us up. We should feel inspired by it, even if we're tired.
But can you think of something recently, say in the last year, that you've suddenly found yourself going, I'm driving this, I'm pushing this, and it's not aligned?
Yeah, definitely with projects that I've started.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely with projects I've started, and then being willing to let it go. Because then you're not, because I work in the mentoring and consultancy, I can't show up fully and give people my best, because if I'm drained, it's not going to work. And so you're trying to force it, or that's when I know that it's out, and it's out of integrity then.
I want to come back to that because Ian said something earlier that sometimes ego can keep us there as well, which I think is a point that we should pick up on. But Ian, can you think of something in your life that you've tried to force or keep going, even though you knew deep down it wasn't really right for you anymore?
When I was doing domestic work in one of my building businesses, and every day I would wake up and think, I don't want to do this. And I just knew it wasn't my path anymore. And that was one thing but that was something that I did. That was necessity. So there was a reason for doing that.
Was it necessity, or was it the story you told yourself that made it feel like necessity?
Well,
was it the only option?
It wasn't the only option, and I don't do it anymore. So it clearly wasn't the only option, because I don't do it anymore.
Kind of where I want to go for the viewer's perspective, and not slapping you around in this episode, is it felt like it was the only choice at that point because of the story you were telling yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you sort of take yourself out of that pigeonhole and you start to look at the options, you start to see the different opportunities that are there for you. And there's quite a lot. You've just got to open your eyes up and see what direction you want to go in.
Mm.
So I then moved on to a completely different kind of work, which has now sort of grown the business to where it is now.
Question what I'm interested in, and it's not about, your business and or what you do, is did you consciously make that choice, or did something happen that made you take that choice?
It was a period of not wanting and just feeling like it wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It just didn't feel right.
The reason
I didn't want to do it, and that made me look for the choices.
Yeah. The reason I'm fishing is because sometimes we're left where we're put in a position where we have no choice but to go down that path. Yeah. We can't force it anymore because it's broken, it's gone, and then we actually find, well, actually this is better for us. In the therapy room, what I tend to find is that even though people know, there's this mass reluctance to not give up, to change, to move the situation. So it's almost like we fell into this trap of learning that if something hurts, it's valuable, and that we need to keep going through the pain to lead us to something.
Well, that's
Or
right.
actually with that, sometimes people, but I've put so much time into this.
Yeah, so much of me is invested in it now. It's part of who I am and my identity.
Yeah, whether it's relationship, work, whatever it is, but it's taken like the last 5 years, 10 years. It's that.
So it's almost like we associate pain with progress.
Yeah, no pain, no gain is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's utter crap, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That in certain elements that's true, but in a lot of the times we're just forcing something, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I mean, we absolutely sort of equate struggle to value without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dispel that, because we often have to struggle for the things that we want, and it's part of the struggles are part of the world preparing us to be the person that we said that we wanted to be at the outset of that journey. So I wouldn't dispel having to work hard and having to struggle,
Agreed.
but every day shouldn't feel like a battle.
But the thing is, effort is great as long as it's building something real and not keeping something that's fundamentally broken going.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a big difference there,
So-
isn't there?
It's like plugging a dam that's like already getting holes in it. It's like you walk away.
Or working in an environment where you no longer believe.
Yeah.
You no longer believe in what you're doing. That's that it just totally just takes the jam out your donut. It takes all the fun out of it, all your enthusiasm, and without enthusiasm and energy, every day it's like treading through treacle. It's just hard work.
Well, you mistake chaos for struggle and purpose, don't you?
Yeah,
It's like, by going through all this struggle and chaos, I am achieving. And we just become busy and unhappy and miserable. So why do we find it so hard to step out of that loop, do you think? It's just because it's familiar?
yeah. There's familiarity. I mean, we'd often rather stick with what isn't great than be vulnerable due to our addiction to certainty. We'd rather not step outside the box, stick to what we know. You've got your social conditioning where everybody looks at exhaustion and hard work, and you say, "I'm so stressed," and it's almost seen as a badge of honour
Yeah.
within the workplace. I mean, there's that, but that's not how it should be. You should wake up, feel energised by what you do, and want to do it.
Do you think generally people take enough time and actually stop and reflect and ask themselves, what am I forcing right now?
Yeah, we get to, like, it's not, sometimes people, like, if it's work, yes, they've got to, like, get the paycheck and it's not as easy, but it's like, you can still reevaluate, like, what's energizing, because you can start to do things on the weekend that support you. So we're not saying, well, it's, some people may be listening going, oh, well, it's all right for you, you don't have to, but it's like, well, yeah, start to look at what energizes you or what drains your energy. What are your values? What is reflected in that or not? Like, if you're against, okay, an easy one is, if you're a vegan, you're not going to go get a job in a butcher shop. Like, so you can start to make choices that reflect your value and will feel energizing, and let the other, like, walk away from those other things, because we don't need to force something, whether it's work or whether it's relationships. Obviously, like, in relationships, whether we've chosen a partner or it's family, we can't always walk away, but it can be that don't keep trying to fix something or that's already broken.
But you don't always recognise that you are forcing it, do you?
No, well, maybe if we look at, does it feel like healthy effort, or we're forcing
Yeah.
what we're doing? And healthy effort is, it's going to be joyful. You're going to get an outcome that you believe in and that you're looking for. Something that, again, it comes down to our why.
Yeah.
Why are we doing it? Keeping
And I
our
think
focus on
healthy
that.
effort, I think that's a good healthy effort versus it's hard, because that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's not, yes, we have to put in the effort, but it doesn't have to be hard versus healthy effort, where we're working towards something that we're inspired by, we've got a goal, we're driven, there's a reason, there's, as you said, a why behind it. But yeah, again, it's like if it feels hard, then I think people need to reevaluate, well, why does it feel hard?
I think the hardest bit is actually admitting to yourself that it's not working.
Yes.
Because that usually means that you've got to face some kind of change in your life. And that can feel a bit sucky, can't it?
Yep.
Or scary.
I actually had a client a number of years ago, and I think I've mentioned her before, and she came to me originally into the therapy room because she wanted support with being more motivated to do something that wasn't aligned with her, obviously. And it was the second time she changed career, and she was wanting to be fixed, to do something she didn't really want to do, quite frankly. And when I got talking to her about what was her passions, what did she want to do, she basically wanted to be a DJ. So I said, you don't need me, you need to go and do the thing you really want to do. And she did. And it wasn't just me that was telling her. She was hearing that from other people, but she had it in her head. This is what I need to do. This is the path I've chosen. I keep giving things up. I must stick with this. So, yeah, I mean, for all I know, she's a famous DJ somewhere in the world right now. But yeah, it's that knowing when it's that hard and you think you need to get somebody to help you get through the hard.
Yeah, and I think, that leads into sort of flow versus force.
Yeah.
Even when it's right for you, it will still take work. But you are achieving, you are genuinely achieving something. You're not bleeding all over yourself and constantly feeling tired and drained and absolutely battered by it. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? When you're forcing it, your body definitely knows. You were talking earlier, Ian, about, the phase you're watching your younger brother go through at the moment. You can remember it and you were like...
Yeah, it's exhausting just to watch.
Yeah.
But again, that's his direction. For me, I couldn't think of anything worse. I've moved on from that because it wasn't right for me.
Have either of you ever fell into the trap of staying in the wrong thing because you didn't want it to look wrong to anyone else?
Yeah, I had put all my eggs into one basket when I wanted to train to be a Pilates instructor because I loved it myself. And it was fine initially, but then I started... And it was an environment where I couldn't choose my clients because I was working in somebody else's studio. I started dreading Wednesdays on Tuesday.
Right, okay.
Because I started dreading it, and it was consistent, and it was just because it was a particular person that would come in, and they were challenging as heck, and it didn't inspire me. It was it was a clash of personalities, maybe. And I knew that something's wrong if I'm dreading. Initially, it was just Wednesday morning. I'd be dreading Wednesday, but then it became like Tuesday evening, and then Tuesday. And I was like, okay, what's wrong here? Why am I doing this? And then that was when I realized, oh, this is where I'm out of integrity and out of alignment. Like, I can't do this, and I have no control over this. So I changed it, but it wasn't like a decision I made overnight. But yeah, I started dreading it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Things that come to mind is in a chapter of my life, I wanted to move into a certain area of business, so I forced to go into the corporate arena. Just because I felt that's what we should be doing. It's the next level, and wanted that kudos of working with certain names and certain brands, and you get that initial high of that brand's now working with us, and we're now doing all this work. I hated it. It was soulless, and it was nothing like I thought it was. But I thought, well, we just need to keep going because we're doing the right thing. We're doing what people expect us to be doing. And I was exhausted, wiped out, emotionally tired, not enjoying it, but constantly felt like I had to keep going to prove that we were enough and we were successful.
Yeah, but that's fitting into somebody else's culture. This is the thing within... I've always worked for sort of small family businesses or for myself. And working within my values it's a great way of actually feeling as if, you're where you should be. But when all of a sudden you're starting to, work or act in alignment with somebody else's values that you don't necessarily agree with, then it starts to feel forced. Conversations start to feel forced, and it's just not good for your life force. It's just,
So is that one of the red flags that you'd notice if it starts to feel forced?
yes.
Conversations?
Oh,
or-
conversation, absolutely.
Right.
When conversation flows easily, you can find a common ground
Yeah.
because you don't have to share the same hobbies, but you share similar values. Then that's a good indicator that you're not forcing a square peg into a round hole.
What about you? What's a red flag for a situation where you think you might be forcing things or not flowing?
Not pla- well, it's been really interesting because with flowing, I think I just want to say that it doesn't mean it's super easy, because for something to be psychologically, to be in flow, as they say, and that buzzword, like psychologically speaking, it is challenging. It is something we haven't done before, because anything that's repetitive or too easy, we're not going to get that sense of self-fulfillment. And I think it's definitely been something where you have to have a little bit of challenge, whether it's learning something new, whether it's building a business, stepping outside your comfort zone. And when it's forced, oh my gosh, it's draining. It's like you're being squashed. It gives you no enjoyment. It's you don't want to learn it anymore. Like you get caught into that, but it feels forced and stuck. Whereas when you're in flow, yes, it can be challenging, but actually that's where the power is. That's where we get to be inspired and inspire others.
I think the anxiety of hanging on to the maybe of the situation is actually worse than letting go of it.
Yeah, a lot of nostalgia. Is that how you mean, or?
I don't know. I think, when you're trying to force it and you're hoping and you're complying or whatever you're doing, you're not living your truth. You're doing it because you think you should be doing it. Holding on to that creates a lot of anxiety and stress. But I think that feeling is definitely worse than the feeling of just letting it go.
Yeah. And in the build-up to letting things go, and I'm sure we'll mention this again, but people don't want to be thought badly of. So they hang on to situations because we've all got this thing where we don't want people to speak badly, even if we don't think very much of those people. We don't want them to think badly of us. So we hang on in them situations and allow ourselves to be in places where we just don't belong. And like I've said a million times, somebody delivered it to me quite brutally once, but I'm glad they did. It was, don't force yourself into places where you don't belong.
Healthy effort versus forced effort.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I've noticed over the years is that even though that feeling of letting it go feels horrible, when you do actually do that, there's like this boomerang effect where the right thing comes back to you. So I gave you the example of letting the corporate thing go. What actually happened is when I let that go, a different level, slightly different client kind of came back in on the boomerang effect, and it was a lot more enjoyable, and they were a lot more aligned with us.
Well, and listen, that's making space. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all heard if you want to call something in, like you've got to make space for that opportunity. So decluttering your environment can not necessarily be like decluttering the furniture or the clothes. It's like decluttering who you're choosing to work with.
Yeah.
Made space, because maybe if you were working with that person or that corporate, you wouldn't have had the space to take on this other opportunity. And I think that's something we've got to be willing to let go of good in order to experience great.
And talking about decluttering, you can do, if you look at, I know we weren't going to go down the road of relationships, but you look at relationships, friendships, work relationships, and if they're not naturally your people, or it takes so much effort trying to make, externally validate, trying to constantly do things that you normally wouldn't do for the validation to keep them happy, because you're not quite in sync, you're not aligned with each other. Whereas when you do find a situation when you're aligned with those around you, you don't have to do all those things. So you're making space because you're not trying to seek validation. You're not trying to make the extra effort. You're not trying to you're not overthinking situations.
So you have to ask yourself, if you stopped forcing it or working it, would it remain?
Yeah, exactly. But by removing all that nonsense, you create space for
I think we've
peace.
probably all got these. But our friendship group, our circle. We've got this circle that we connected all the other week, didn't we? Yeah. But none of that is forced, does it? It doesn't. No. It just remains. It just stays. And it doesn't need overthinking and analysing and lots of energy and work. It's natural. It's just there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's other dynamics in your life where you can go, I have to put in a lot more energy and focus and drive to keep those circles spinning.
No, that particular circle you're talking about, what it is they know us. We all know each other, and we accept each other, warts and all. We don't change our perception of them when we see each other struggle. You know, we have a bigger picture of each other. So if we have a wobble, you can put it in context to the person.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, there's no falseness, there's no front, there's no performance. And when you're in a relationship, a work relationship, friendship, where there isn't a performance required, you can just be.
Yeah.
That is
That's what
kind
you
of,
need.
yeah, that kind of sums up what it is I've been trying to say.
Yeah. We just don't take the time to stop and ask ourselves, what is consuming me? What am I forcing in my life right now?
Yeah, and then also, if you're forcing something, you're actually not choosing yourself.
You're 100% abandoning yourself to sustain it.
Yeah, so letting go actually means you're choosing yourself, and that is not selfish.
Yeah. Do you think people, we touched on relationships there. Do you think sometimes careers, jobs,
Yeah.
you can lose your identity in who you are in that as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Become misaligned, not feeling, you're living your true, authentic self. So what do you do when you find yourself in that situation?
Well, you change it. I mean, I already said one of my many careers, I chose to leave being a Pilates instructor. And that, I mean, it's so long ago. But I realized that, oh my gosh, yeah, I could have carried on and then started dreading. Maybe I'd have started dreading, Wednesday and Thursday. So I chose to change.
Right.
It sounds simple, but then I got to come back to what's important to me. What do I value? What do I want? What empowers me? What gives me energy? And so it's reevaluating and choosing yourself. And also, I want to be a good example to my son. Like, I want to show him, you don't have to do something that's demoralizing. That wasn't demoralizing, but you don't have to do something that basically dims your light.
See, when you have made the choice to maybe step away from something or stop forcing it, for you guys, was the sense of peace or relief instant, or did it take a while to trickle through?
Instant in my situation. In that particular situation, it was that peace was instant, even though I knew that I was going to be working for a set number of weeks or months. At that point, I knew that there was an end in sight. I knew I had made a choice that was right for me and the family. And also, so that gave me some breathing space. And then because I felt that peace, I was also able to start looking at, okay, and so now what am I going to do as well? And then see, I got to play around with interests and what direction I was going to go. And so, I found peace instantly just in the knowing that I'd made that choice.
Within a work environment, it's instant. It's making the decision that's the tough bit. I've found walking away from people, now that takes a lot more. That takes a lot more figuring out. Absolutely, it's not black and white. It's figuring out where I was trying to push myself in, and I didn't fit in. Understanding why. Also understanding, coming to terms with the fact that things maybe weren't what you were. That's definitely a thing for me. And it was about just being able to stop and reflect, question my own self-perception, what I was believing at the time, and understanding what was a struggle, what flowed, what felt like a struggle, what drained my energy, why did it drain my energy. And when it comes to interpersonal relationship, whether that's friends or whatever, I always find that more difficult. That's just me personally.
Yeah. I was, this morning, before I headed out to pick you up from the airport, I was watching a TikTok, and there's a guy on there who was talking about how unhappy he was with his life, or where, the point he'd got to in his life. He was working long hours, working really hard, stressed, not enjoying life. And he was just walking along with his camera and said, I did something pretty drastic yesterday. I cut my working hours down to part-time, and I don't know how I'm going to cope financially. I'm going to need to make some sacrifices and changes in my life. But I wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. I needed time to be outside and be in nature and do things, and I will find a way of making that work. Mm-hmm. But I knew if I continued doing what I was doing, I wasn't going to be happy. And it's scary, but it should be scary. But I'll figure it out. You know.
I mean, if we think about it, the average life expectancy, let's say, okay, so I'm in my mid-50s. Hopefully I've got another good sort of 30 years or so. Like, what do I want to be doing with the rest of our time? I think we kind of, when we're young, of course, it's like, yes, life goes on forever and all this, but we also change. So it can be something that used to, did feel empowering and did give us energy. So that's okay. So I want to just quickly bring that in. But it's also what do we want to do with the rest of our lives? It doesn't mean it's oh, yeah, I'm turning 55 and that's it. Life's over. I might as well just see it out and get on with what I'm doing. I mean, I could also, we've seen with the amount of people I've lost in the last, recently, literally we could die sooner than we think. So what do we want to do with the rest of our lives?
And the things that you think are important, they're actually not as important as you think you are. And the stuff that you think you remember, you won't. I've done some amazing stuff in my work and been to amazing places and experienced amazing events. But I remember the little things like sitting outside with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up, or walking along an amazing beach, or having an experience with friends where you've just belly laughed and totally been in that moment. And it's how much of the stuff do you think that you're forcing is getting in the way of that stuff?
And that's and just quickly, I'd like to say too, so with all the people that I've lost, it sounds like I've lost, a lost sock, but of all the people who've died recently, when I think of them, I remember how I felt when I was with them, or something they wrote for me, or it was an experience, or I've ended up having, I've talked about the challenging relationship I had with my father, and he's the most recent death. He died in February. I've actually only been having good memories, and I had a challenging relationship with him, and I actually had 14 years where I didn't speak to him. But I've gone through my own, journey of forgiveness with him. And I'm not remembering all those things that were I was so angry about before. I have such lovely memories. And so those are the things that I'm remembering, even those people that have gone that were challenging in my life. So, what are we going to do with the rest of our lives, gentlemen?
Well, I'll just go back to what Andy was saying, which is it's about having that calm. And what I was saying in the previous episode about contentment. And for me, part of that is, do you know what you were just saying about just sitting there having a coffee and watching the sun come up, or just enjoying being in the moment,
whatever the moment is.
Well, the thing is, when you're forced into situations, that situation never leaves you alone. It's always somewhere nagging in your head, so you can't have those moments.
Or they're there and you don't even see them. You miss them. You're so tunnel vision.
What I meant is the situation that you're forced into, normally it's creating stress, it's taking your energy. So you'll be sat there trying to have that moment, but you're not now, you're not present, because part of your mind is away dealing with this situation that you forced yourself into because it's not your spot.
I think the other thing is you've got to listen to your inner voice as well in these situations where it's going to go, if you stop, you're going to run out of money. You'll have no friends. You're going to be alone. They're going to think you're this. That's going to happen. This is going to happen. Just tune out from that narrative.
Yeah.
Because all that stuff will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Actually, like the guy on the TikTok said this morning, I've cut my hours down to part-time. I'm going to have to make some sacrifices, but I'll find a way to make it work because it gives me this.
Yeah, it gives you space. It gives you space for other opportunities.
Yeah, totally. Well, I really enjoyed talking about that. I think that was a great one. As always, thank you very much for watching this episode or listening to this episode of Tickety Boo, and we look forward to catching up with you in the next episode.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP, or if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.